courtroom, a political battlefield, and a ticking clock. It all started with an ultimatum. 3 days to leave her party or face the consequences. This wasn't some backroom deal. This was a public threat made by none other than a former president of the United States, Donald Trump, and his powerful allies. He believed he had all the power, all the leverage, and that his opponents were scared. But he was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating a woman with receipts. This is the story of how Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took an insult and turned it into the biggest financial bombshell of the year, shattering the myth of MAGA and its powerful puppet masters. It was a tense day on Capitol Hill. The air was thick with the kind of political theater that makes you want to reach through the screen and shake someone. The hearing, supposedly about a new financial transparency bill, had been hijacked. The moment the gavel came down, the chaos began. The former president, seated across from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, looked more like a ringmaster than a witness. He leaned forward, a smirk on his face, and delivered his threat. "You have 3 days to leave your party, Ms. Crockett, or the court will punish you." Why would he issue such a direct, public threat? Because he thought he could. He believed his power was absolute. He thought he could use intimidation as a weapon and get away with it. He'd done it before, and he assumed this time would be no different. The what was a direct threat. The why was a display of pure, unadulterated power. And who was this threat aimed at? A rising star, a firebrand congresswoman who had proven she wasn't afraid to speak her mind and who he saw as a genuine threat. How did the others react? Like a Greek chorus of villains. Judge Joubert, a man whose gavel seemed to be permanently set to guilty, chimed in with his own chilling warning. "We will not hesitate to issue sanctions, Congresswoman." Then came Senator Tim Scott, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a stern, threatening tone. And finally, Justice Clarence Thomas, who spoke with an unsettling gravitas about the possibility of disbarment. It was an all-star cast of characters, all lined up to intimidate one person. The whole thing felt like a scene from a bad action movie, but it was all too real. The threats were coming from all sides, and the audience in the hearing room and watching at home was holding its breath, wondering what she would do. Would she cower? Would she fight back with a fiery, emotional outburst? Would she run for the hills? Honestly, I was half expecting her to pull a classic movie move like a little "you can't handle the truth." But then I remembered, this isn't Hollywood. This is State of Lies. The truth here is usually a lot more complicated and a lot funnier than a movie script. Crockett, however, did none of the above. She didn't shout, she didn't cower. She just sat there completely calm, a small knowing smile playing on her lips. She let them talk. She let the threats hang in the air like a bad perfume. She let the tension build. This was a masterclass in psychological warfare. She was letting them dig their own grave, and they were doing a fantastic job. For a full minute, the room was silent after the last threat. Then she slowly reached for a stack of folders on the table in front of her. She looked up directly into the eyes of Donald Trump and started speaking. "Mr. Trump, you've given me 3 days. You've asked me to leave my party. But what if I told you I've been working on a timeline of my own, a timeline of 7 months? The what was a new timeline, the why, to turn their intimidation into a moment of truth." April 2023, the month of showers and, well, in this case, a massive downpour of cash. Crockett's first bombshell hit the room with the force of a wrecking ball. "My first receipt," she began, holding up a folder. "A $28 million transfer. What was it? A massive sum of money. Where did it come from? The Trump Organization. And where did it go? Directly to a political action committee, a PAC conveniently labeled MAGA. Why was this so significant? Because it was a direct line from a private organization to a political entity, bypassing campaign finance rules in a way that, as Crockett calmly explained, was either the most brilliant legal loophole of all time or, just straight up a crime. Who were the people who thought they were above the law? How was a series of shady transfers, a digital paper trail that was about to become very, very public? I bet you thought that was just a typo on the ledger, didn't you? No, sir. I'm afraid that's a whole lot of money with a whole lot of questions attached. The next month, May 2023, the plot thickened. What happened? Another transfer, this one a $14 million transfer. The why? It was routed through an offshore entity. Think about that for a second. An offshore entity, the kind of place where money goes to vacation and never comes back. It went from the Trump Organization, took a little trip to an island with no extradition treaty, and then ended up in a political action committee. This was less a financial transfer and more a global game of hide-and-seek with money. The who? The same powerful figures in the room. The tension was getting so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Tim Scott was shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Justice Thomas looked like he just swallowed a lemon. They had thought they were untouchable, and now their financial histories were being laid bare for the world to see. June 2023, this one was personal. "My third receipt," Crockett said, her voice still calm, "is a $36 million transfer, this time from the Trump Organization directly to Senator Tim Scott's PAC." The what was a direct financial link. The who was Senator Tim Scott. The why was a question that hung in the air. Was this a donation, or was it something more? Crockett didn't say it was a bribe. She didn't have to. The number spoke for itself. $36 million, that's not a donation, that's a mortgage payment for a small country. I'm just saying, if I'm getting that kind of money, I'm at least buying a new hat, but that's just me, I'm a simple woman. July 2023, the shockwaves continued. What was the next revelation? A $4.2 million transfer. The why? This one wasn't for a PAC. It was a direct transfer into a household trust belonging to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The who was a Supreme Court justice. The how was a direct transfer of cash into a private account. The audience gasped. This wasn't just political corruption. This was a direct, glaring conflict of interest at the highest level of the judiciary. Judge Joubert, who had been threatening Crockett with sanctions just minutes before, was now looking down at his desk, as if suddenly fascinated by the texture of the wood grain. He was completely silent. Tables had turned. The hunter had become the hunted. You know, it's funny how quickly people's bluster disappears when you present them with a little thing called a receipt. It's like a vampire seeing a cross. All that confident swagger just melts away. August 2023. The money trail didn't stop. Next, a $15 million transfer, Crockett announced. It was an unknown consulting firm. The why and the how were about to connect the dots in a way that was undeniable. This consulting firm, which had been set up just months before, then signed a series of lucrative contracts with a major MAGA media outlet. The money, it seemed, was being laundered through a shell company to influence the news. The truth was being twisted and manipulated by a money trail that was a mile long. I guess they figured if you can't beat them with facts, you might as well buy the news and tell everyone they're wrong. It's a bold strategy. September 2023. The next piece of the puzzle fell into place. What happened? A $6.7 million transfer. The why? It went to a legal defense fund for Trump's attorneys. But where did the money come from? Offshore transfers disguised as consulting fees. This was a classic case of what the legal world calls funny business. They were using foreign money to pay for legal fees and trying to hide it under the guise of legitimate business. The who? It was all the people sitting in that room, from the man who gave the ultimatum to the judge who was now staring at his own shoes. The whole structure was being exposed, one receipt at a time. The courtroom wasn't a place of justice anymore. It was a crime scene, and Crockett was the one with the crime scene photos. October 2023, the final revelation. What was it? A $7.9 million transfer. The why? It went directly into the family foundation of Judge Joubert. The who? The very man who had threatened her with sanctions. The whole thing was a perfectly choreographed dance of corruption, and Crockett had just pulled back the curtain to reveal the whole sordid affair. She paused, letting the shock ripple through the room. Trump, who had been shouting and blustering just minutes before, was now a pale, sputtering mess. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost, and that ghost was a spreadsheet. Crockett's voice, which had been calm and measured, now rose slightly, but it was not with anger. It was with a kind of poetic finality. She looked directly at Trump, a look of profound disappointment and pity on her face. "Mr. Trump," she said, "you gave me 3 days to leave my party, but in 7 months I have uncovered your entire operation." Then came the line that would echo for years to come. The line that was so perfect it had to be a work of fiction, except it wasn't. It was the truth. "If I am finished, Mr. Trump, then why are you the one shouting?" And he was. He was shouting. He was screaming, in fact, a jumble of incoherent rage and denials. The man who had been so calm and confident minutes before was now a caricature of himself. His bluster had been exposed for what it was, a shield against the truth. This was the moment. But what was the complete and utter collapse of a powerful man's credibility? The why was because his intimidation had failed, and in its place, the truth had emerged piece by piece, document by document. The who was not just Donald Trump, but all his allies, all the people who believed they were above the law. The how was through calm, meticulous preparation and the undeniable power of evidence. Jasmine Crockett didn't win with a fiery speech or a loud argument. She won with a stack of folders. She turned a bully's game into a victory for transparency. She went from being the target of a witch hunt to the one holding the broom. And that, my friends, is how you win. You don't match their energy. You don't play their game, you create your own. You turn their timeline into your own. You take their insults and you use them as fuel. Jasmine Crockett's actions that day in court weren't just a political moment. They were a historic turning point. It was a reminder that even the most powerful people in the world are still subject to one unbreakable law, the law of receipts. And when the truth is on your side, you don't need to shout. The documents will speak for themselves. And what's the next chapter in this incredible story? Well, that's what we'll be covering in our next video. You won't want to miss it.